I remember the first time I laid eyes on Rachel. It was at a mutual friend's barbecue, the kind of event where the smell of grilled meat and the sound of laughter filled the air. Rachel stood out immediately, not just because of her striking beauty, but because of the effortless way she seemed to navigate the crowd, making everyone feel at ease. We hit it off right away, our conversations flowing as naturally as the cold beers we kept reaching for. We got married 3 years later. Those early days were a whirlwind of passion and excitement. We were both career-driven, she as a marketing executive and me as a software engineer. Our schedules were packed, but we always found time for each other, whether it was a quick coffee date before work or a lazy Sunday in bed. Life was good, almost perfect. We bought a cozy house in the suburbs, filled it with memories, and even got a dog, a golden retriever named Max. Friends envied our relationship, often pointing out how in sync we seemed. We communicated well, laughed often, and rarely fought. Looking back, those years felt like a dream. But then, things started to change. Subtle at first, almost imperceptible. Rachel began working late more often. Her business trips became more frequent and longer. She'd come home tired, her mind seemingly elsewhere, her once vibrant eyes clouded with thoughts she wouldn't share. I chalked it up to the stress of her demanding job. After all, marketing campaigns could be brutal, and I trusted her implicitly. One evening, about a year ago, I remember sitting in our living room, the soft hum of the TV in the background, Max asleep at my feet. Rachel was upstairs, supposedly finishing up some last-minute work. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table next to me, lighting up with a message notification. Normally, I wouldn't think twice about it, but something made me glance at the screen. A message preview from Mike popped up. "Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Last night was amazing." My heart skipped a beat. I knew Rachel had a colleague named Mike, but this message felt too personal, too intimate. I tried to push the gnawing suspicion away, telling myself it was probably just a harmless inside joke or a misinterpretation. But a seed of doubt had been planted, one that would grow and fester over the coming months. I started paying closer attention, noticing things I'd previously overlooked or dismissed. The way Rachel would quickly lock her phone when I entered the room. The secretive smiles she'd give while texting. The sudden importance of looking good for work events that I wasn't invited to. Our sex life, once passionate and frequent, dwindled to almost nothing. Whenever I tried to initiate, she'd have an excuse. Tired, stressed, not in the mood. The breaking point came on a weekend she was supposedly away on another business trip. I'd planned a surprise visit to her hotel, thinking we could steal a romantic evening together. But when I arrived, the front desk informed me there was no reservation under her name. After some awkward explanations, they revealed there was indeed a reservation under Mike Johnson, with an additional guest. I waited in the lobby, my heart pounding, hoping it was all a mistake. Hours later, I saw them. Rachel and Mike, walking hand in hand, laughing like teenagers in love. They didn't see me, but the sight was enough to shatter my world. The woman I loved, the life we built together, suddenly felt like a lie. I didn't confront them that night. I needed time to process, to plan my next steps. The drive back home was a blur of tears and anger. How could she do this to us? To me? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more painful than the last. In the days that followed, I fell into a routine of despair and detective work. I scoured through her social media, emails, anything that could give me answers. The more I uncovered, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't a one-time fling or a moment of weakness. It was an affair, carefully hidden, but unmistakably real. That's when I decided I needed to confront Rachel, to hear her side of the story, and to figure out where we go from here. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about understanding how we had drifted so far apart without me even realizing it. And most importantly, it was about reclaiming my life, one painful step at a time. Confronting Rachel about her affair felt like stepping into a storm. I had rehearsed the conversation in my head 100 times, each scenario more volatile than the last. But no amount of preparation could brace me for the reality of what was about to unfold. It was a Friday evening, and Rachel was due back from her business trip. I waited for her in the living room, nursing a glass of whiskey to steady my nerves. The minutes dragged on, each one amplifying the anticipation and dread swirling inside me. When the front door finally opened, and she walked in, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal. "Hey," she greeted me, her voice light and casual. She looked tired but content, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Hey," I replied, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside me. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered, replaced by a cautious look. "About what?" I gestured for her to sit, and she complied, albeit hesitantly. I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm. "About us. About where you've really been this weekend." Rachel's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of panic crossing her face. She recovered quickly, though, her expression hardening into one of defiance. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Rachel," I said, my voice firmer now. "I know you weren't on a business trip. I went to the hotel. They had no record of you being there, but they did have a reservation for Mike Johnson." Her face paled, the defiance melting away to reveal the guilt and fear underneath. "I can explain," she started, her voice trembling. "Can you?" I shot back, the anger I'd been suppressing finally breaking free. "Can you really explain why you've been lying to me? Why you've been sleeping with someone else?" Rachel looked down, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I'm sorry, okay? I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you do it?" I demanded, my voice rising. "How long has this been going on?" "About a year," she admitted quietly, her eyes brimming with tears. "I didn't plan for it to happen, it just did." "A year?" I echoed, stunned. "You've been lying to me for a year, Rachel. How could you?" "I don't know," she whispered, her tears spilling over. "I was lonely, and things were so stressful at work. Mike was there for me when I needed someone. It just happened." "It just happened?" I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "You don't just happen to have an affair for a year. This was a choice, Rachel. A deliberate, ongoing choice." She flinched at my words, but I didn't care. The pain and anger were too overwhelming. "You could have talked to me," I continued. "We could have worked through whatever was bothering you, but you chose to betray me instead." "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice breaking. "I know I messed up. I'll end it with Mike. We can work this out, I promise." "Work this out?" I scoffed, shaking my head. "How do you expect me to believe anything you say now? You've shattered my trust, Rachel. I don't know if we can come back from this." Her tears flowed freely now, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I watched her, my own eyes burning with unshed tears. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to hold her, and tell her we'd find a way through this. But another part of me, a larger part, knew that the damage was too great. The life we'd built together had been irrevocably tainted by her betrayal. "I need some time to think," I said finally, my voice hollow. "I can't just pretend this didn't happen." Rachel nodded, unable to speak. I stood up, the weight of the conversation pressing down on me. "I'm going to stay with a friend for a few days. We'll talk more when I get back." Without waiting for her response, I turned and walked out of the house, the place that had once been my sanctuary, now feeling like a prison. As I drove away, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, anger, sadness. The confrontation had been as painful as I'd feared, but at least the truth was out in the open. Now, I had to figure out what to do with it. Over the next few days, I stayed with my best friend, Dan. He was supportive and understanding, offering me a place to stay and a sympathetic ear. We spent hours talking, drinking, and trying to make sense of the mess that my life had become. "Maybe you need to confront Mike too," Dan suggested one evening as we sat on his porch nursing beers. "Get his side of the story." The idea hadn't occurred to me, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I needed to understand the full extent of Rachel's betrayal, and confronting her lover seemed like the next logical step. The next day I drove to the address I'd found for Mike, a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. As I stood at his front door, I felt a surge of anxiety. What was I hoping to achieve here? Closure? Answers? Maybe both. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding. Moments later the door opened, and there stood Mike, a tall, athletic man with a confident air about him. His expression shifted from curiosity to apprehension as he recognized me. "Mark, right?" he said, his voice wary. "That's right," I replied, my tone cold. "We need to talk." He nodded, stepping aside to let me in. We sat in his living room, the tension thick between us. I assume you know why I'm here, I began, my gaze fixed on him. Mike sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, man, I'm really sorry about all this. I never meant to hurt you. Then why did you do it? I asked, echoing the question I'd posed to Rachel. Why get involved with a married woman? I don't have a good answer for that, he admitted. Rachel and I just clicked, and one thing led to another. I know it was wrong, but at the time, it felt right. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my anger in check. Do you love her? Mike hesitated, then shook his head. No, I don't. It was never about love. It was just an escape. An escape, I repeated, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Well, your little escape has destroyed my marriage. I know, he said, looking genuinely remorseful. I'm sorry, Mark. I really am. If there's anything I can do to make this right— You can stay the hell away from Rachel, I interrupted, my voice sharp. You can let us try to fix what you helped break. Mike nodded, his expression solemn. You have my word. I'll back off. I stood up, the conversation leaving me feeling drained. Good, I said simply, turning to leave. Stay away from her. As I drove back to Dan's place, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hollow victory. Confronting Mike hadn't provided the closure I'd hoped for. Instead, it had only confirmed the depth of Rachel's betrayal. Now, the real challenge lay ahead, deciding whether to try and salvage our marriage or walk away from it all. The days that followed my confrontation with Mike were a blur of confusion and emotional turbulence. Staying at Dan's place provided a temporary refuge, but the thought of Rachel and the wreckage of our relationship haunted my every waking moment. I knew the time had come to have a more serious discussion with Rachel, to confront her head-on about the future of our marriage. One evening, after much deliberation, I decided to return home. I needed to face Rachel again, to hear her out, and to see if there was any hope left for us. When I walked through the door, Max greeted me with his usual enthusiasm, but Rachel was nowhere in sight. I called out to her, my voice echoing through the empty house. Moments later, she appeared at the top of the stairs, her face a mixture of relief and apprehension. Mark, she said softly, descending the stairs. I'm glad you're back. We need to talk. We do, I agreed, my tone firm. We need to lay everything out on the table and figure out what comes next. Rachel nodded, leading me into the living room. We sat down, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Why, Rachel? I began, my voice barely above a whisper. Why did you do this to us? She looked down, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. I don't have a good answer, Mark. I was lonely and stressed, and Mike was there. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. A mistake, I echoed, my anger bubbling to the surface. A mistake that lasted a year? That's not a mistake, Rachel. That's a choice, an ongoing, deliberate choice. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I forced myself to remain stoic. I needed answers, not more apologies. Did you ever think about how this would affect me? Us? I did, she whispered, her voice breaking. But I was too caught up in my own world. I know that sounds selfish, and it is. I wasn't thinking clearly. And Mike? I asked, my voice tinged with bitterness. Was he worth it? No, she said quickly, shaking her head. He wasn't. He was never worth it. I don't love him, Mark. It was just something to fill the void. I leaned back, my mind racing. So what now? What do you want from me, Rachel? She looked up, her eyes pleading. I want to fix this. I want to make it right. I know I've hurt you and I'm so sorry, but I want to try and save our marriage, if you'll let me. Save our marriage? I repeated, incredulous. How do you expect me to do that? How can I ever trust you again? I don't know, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, anything. I just want a chance to make amends. The room fell silent, her words hanging in the air. I wanted to believe her, to believe that we could somehow rebuild what had been broken. But the wounds were still fresh, the betrayal too raw. I don't know if I can, I said finally, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. Rachel's tears flowed freely now, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Please, Mark, just give me a chance. We've been through so much together. Don't throw it all away. I stood up, needing to put some distance between us. I need time to think, I said, my voice hardening. This isn't something I can just decide overnight. She nodded, wiping her tears. I understand. Take all the time you need, just don't shut me out completely. Without another word, I walked out of the room, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. I needed space, clarity, a way to process everything that had happened. I spent the night in the guest room, unable to face sleeping in the same bed we had shared for years. The next morning I woke early, the weight of the previous night's conversation still heavy on my shoulders. Rachel was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She looked up as I entered, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Morning, she said softly. Morning, I replied, my voice devoid of warmth. I'm going for a run. I need to clear my head. She nodded, not saying anything more. I left the house, the crisp morning air a welcome contrast to the suffocating tension inside. As I ran, my mind replayed our conversation, over and over, each word cutting deeper into my heart. When I returned, Rachel was gone. A note on the kitchen table explained that she had gone to stay with a friend for a few days, to give me space to think. I was grateful for the solitude, but also felt a pang of sadness at her absence. Despite everything, a part of me still cared for her, still wanted to believe that we could find a way through this. Over the next few days, I immersed myself in work, trying to distract myself from the pain. Dan checked in regularly, offering support and a listening ear. I appreciated his presence, but the decision about my marriage was one I had to make alone. One evening, as I sat in the living room, Max curled up beside me, I received a call from Rachel. Can we talk? She asked, her voice tentative. Yeah, I replied, my heart heavy. We need to. We agreed to meet at a nearby park, a neutral ground where we could talk without the weight of our home bearing down on us. When I arrived, Rachel was already there, sitting on a bench, her eyes fixed on the ground. She looked up as I approached, her expression a mixture of hope and fear. Hi, she said softly, standing up to greet me. Hi, I replied, sitting down beside her. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. And? She prompted, her eyes searching mine. And I still don't know if we can fix this, I admitted. But I'm willing to try. For now. Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for giving us a chance. I held up a hand, stopping her. But there are conditions. We go to counseling. We work on this, really work on it. And you cut all ties with Mike. Completely. Of course, she agreed quickly. I'll do whatever it takes. We sat in silence for a while, the enormity of what lay ahead sinking in. This was just the beginning of a long and painful journey, one that would test us both in ways we couldn't yet imagine. But for now, we had taken the first step. Whether we could rebuild the trust and love that had been shattered remained to be seen. But at least we were trying. The days that followed were filled with a tense kind of hope. Rachel moved back in, and we began the difficult process of picking up the pieces. We found a counselor, a kind but firm woman named Dr. Ellis, who didn't sugarcoat the challenges we faced. Our sessions were painful, filled with raw honesty and difficult truths. Rachel opened up about her feelings of loneliness and the pressures of her job, while I shared my own struggles with feeling neglected and betrayed. Dr. Ellis helped us navigate the minefield of emotions, offering guidance and tools to help rebuild our relationship. Despite the progress we made in counseling, the road was far from smooth. There were days when the pain and anger felt insurmountable, when I wondered if it was all worth it. But there were also moments of genuine connection, glimmers of the love that had once defined our relationship. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Rachel reached for my hand. I know it's going to take time, she said softly, but I believe we can get through this, together. I squeezed her hand, a tentative smile tugging at my lips. I hope so, Rachel. I really do. We sat in silence, the weight of the past still heavy, but the promise of a possible future giving us both a glimmer of hope. This was our chance to rebuild, to create something stronger from the ruins of our past. and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of optimism that maybe, just maybe, we could make it work. As much as I tried to focus on rebuilding my relationship with Rachel, the betrayal continued to gnaw at me. Despite the progress we were making in counseling, I couldn't shake the image of Rachel and Mike together, the memory of their deceit constantly playing in my mind like a broken record. The anger I felt toward Mike especially burned like a fire that refused to be extinguished. He had invaded my life, stolen what was mine, and for that, I wanted him to pay. One evening, as Rachel and I sat through another grueling counseling session, an idea began to form in the back of my mind. Dr. Ellis had been emphasizing the importance of confronting our emotions and finding healthy outlets for our anger. But all I could think about was the satisfaction I would feel if I could exact some form of revenge on Mike. Not just petty revenge, but something that would truly make him regret ever crossing me. That night I stayed up late, my thoughts consumed with planning. I knew I had to be careful. Any retaliation had to be calculated, leaving no trace that could lead back to me. As I lay in bed, listening to Rachel's soft breathing, I realized that my desire for revenge wasn't just about Mike. It was about reclaiming my power, taking control of a situation where I had felt utterly powerless. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day researching Mike. He was a private person, but with enough digging, I managed to find some useful information. He was a senior manager at his company, a respected figure with a seemingly spotless reputation. But everyone has skeletons in their closet, and I was determined to find his. After weeks of careful planning and discreet surveillance, I finally found the perfect opportunity. Mike had a major project presentation coming up, one that would make or break his career. I knew that any scandal or distraction could derail his success and tarnish his reputation. It was time to strike. I spent hours crafting a detailed, anonymous letter, outlining Mike's affair with Rachel. I included enough specific details to make it believable, but not enough to implicate Rachel directly. I also hinted at other potential indiscretions, suggesting that Mike had a habit of inappropriate behavior with female colleagues. It was all conjecture, but I knew it would plant seeds of doubt and suspicion. One early morning, under the cover of darkness, I slipped the letter into the mailbox of Mike's company. Then I waited. Days passed, and I heard nothing. I began to wonder if my plan had failed, if the letter had been dismissed as a hoax. But then, the whispers started. Rachel mentioned that Mike had been unusually stressed at work, his usual confidence replaced with anxiety. I feigned ignorance, but inside, I felt a surge of satisfaction. I knew the letter had done its job. The rumors were spreading, and Mike's once untouchable reputation was beginning to crumble. A week later, Rachel came home with news that confirmed my suspicions. "Did you hear about Mike?" she asked, her tone hushed. "What about him?" I replied, trying to sound casual. "He's been put on administrative leave pending an investigation," she said. "Apparently someone accused him of inappropriate conduct." I acted surprised, but inside, I was reveling in the success of my plan. Mike was facing the consequences of his actions, and I couldn't help but feel a grim sense of justice. But the satisfaction was short-lived. The guilt of my actions began to weigh on me, and I started to question whether I had crossed a line. Revenge had felt sweet in the moment, but now it left a bitter aftertaste. Rachel noticed my mood and confronted me one evening. "Mark, is everything okay? You've been acting strange lately." I sighed, debating whether to come clean, but the weight of my secret was too much to bear. "I did something," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. Rachel's eyes widened with concern. "What do you mean?" "I sent an anonymous letter to Mike's company exposing his affair and accusing him of other things," I admitted, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I wanted to make him pay for what he did to us." Rachel's expression shifted from concern to shock to anger. "You did what?" she exclaimed. "Mark, I don't even know what to say. How could you do that?" "I was angry," I said defensively. "I wanted him to feel the same pain he caused me." Rachel shook her head, disbelief etched on her face. "This isn't the way to handle things, Mark. You've only made things worse." Her words stung, but deep down, I knew she was right. In my quest for revenge, I had stooped to Mike's level, becoming someone I barely recognized. The fallout from my actions wasn't just affecting Mike, it was affecting Rachel and me as well. The days that followed were tense. Rachel and I barely spoke, the fragile progress we had made in our relationship now overshadowed by my vengeful actions. Dr. Ellis noticed the shift in our dynamic during our next counseling session and pressed us to talk about it. Reluctantly, I shared what I had done, expecting judgment and condemnation. But Dr. Ellis surprised me with her response. "Anger and revenge are natural responses to betrayal," she said calmly. "But it's important to understand the impact of our actions and find healthier ways to cope with our emotions." Her words resonated with me, and I realized that my need for revenge had only prolonged my pain. Instead of healing, I had reopened old wounds, both for myself and for Rachel. It was time to let go of the anger and focus on rebuilding, not just our relationship, but my own sense of self. With Dr. Ellis's guidance, Rachel and I began to address the underlying issues in our relationship, moving past the affair and my misguided quest for revenge. It wasn't easy, and there were many difficult conversations and painful moments. But slowly, we started to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. In the end, it wasn't revenge that brought me closure. It was forgiveness. Forgiveness of Rachel for her betrayal. Forgiveness of Mike for his role in it. And most importantly, forgiveness of myself for my actions. It was a long and arduous journey, but it was the only path to true healing. As the months passed, Rachel and I found a new rhythm, a new way of being together. Our relationship wasn't perfect, and it never would be. But it was real, and it was ours. We had faced the worst and come out the other side, scarred but stronger. And that, in the end, was the greatest revenge of all, choosing to live and love again despite the pain. In the aftermath of my vengeful actions, I found myself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. The initial satisfaction of seeing Mike's life unravel had been fleeting, replaced by a deeper, more pervasive sense of guilt and regret. My actions had driven a wedge between Rachel and me, and the fragile progress we had made in our relationship now seemed more tenuous than ever. Every day was a struggle to keep my emotions in check. I felt a constant ache in my chest, a physical manifestation of the pain and betrayal that had come to define my existence. The anger that had once fueled my need for revenge had burned out, leaving behind a hollow emptiness that I couldn't seem to fill. Rachel tried to be supportive, but I could see the hurt and disappointment in her eyes. She had been willing to work through her mistakes, to rebuild our relationship, but my actions had complicated everything. Our counseling sessions with Dr. Ellis became even more challenging as we delved into the deeper issues that had led us to this point. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Rachel and I sat in the car outside the counselor's office, the silence between us heavy with unresolved tension. I turned to her, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think we'll ever get past this?" Rachel looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "I don't know, Mark, but I want to try. Do you?" I nodded, feeling the weight of my own words. "I do. I really do. But I don't know how to move forward from here." She reached out and took my hand, her touch a small but significant gesture of reassurance. "Well, figure it out together," she said softly. "One step at a time." Those words became our mantra in the days and weeks that followed. One step at a time, we tried to navigate the rocky terrain of our relationship. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain felt insurmountable, when the memories of betrayal threatened to overwhelm us both. But there were also moments of genuine connection, glimpses of the love that had brought us together in the first place. I spent a lot of time reflecting on my own emotions, trying to understand the depths of my anger and hurt. I realized that my quest for revenge had been a misguided attempt to regain control, to assert my own power in a situation where I had felt utterly powerless. But in doing so, I had only perpetuated the cycle of pain and betrayal. With Dr. Ellis' help, I began to explore healthier ways to cope with my emotions. I started journaling, pouring my thoughts and feelings onto paper as a way to process everything that had happened. I also took up running again, finding solace in the rhythmic pounding of my feet against the pavement, the physical exertion helping to clear my mind. Rachel and I continued our counseling sessions, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. We learned to communicate more openly and honestly, to address our fears and insecurities head-on instead of letting them fester. It was a difficult and often painful process, but it was also incredibly rewarding. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Rachel turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you remember the first time we met?" she asked. I smiled, the memory flooding back with surprising clarity. Of course I do. It was at that barbecue at John and Lisa's place. You were wearing that blue dress, and you couldn't stop talking about your new job. She laughed, the sound warm and familiar. I was so nervous. I thought you were way out of my league. I shook my head, my smile widening. And I thought you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. I couldn't believe you wanted to talk to me. Rachel's expression softened, a hint of sadness creeping into her eyes. I miss those days, she said quietly, when everything felt so new and exciting. Me too, I admitted, reaching out to take her hand. But we've been through a lot since then, and we're still here. That has to count for something, right? She nodded, squeezing my hand. It does. It counts for a lot. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the landscape, I felt a flicker of hope. Our journey was far from over, and there were still many challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were moving in the right direction. The emotional impact of Rachel's betrayal and my subsequent actions had been profound, shaping our relationship in ways I never could have anticipated. But it also forced us to confront the deeper issues that had been lurking beneath the surface, to address the cracks in our foundation and rebuild something stronger. In the months that followed, we continued to work on our relationship, taking things one day at a time. We had good days and bad days, moments of joy and moments of despair. But through it all, we remained committed to each other, determined to find a way forward. I learned to forgive, not just Rachel and Mike, but also myself. I let go of the anger and resentment that had been poisoning my soul, choosing instead to focus on the love and connection that still existed between us. It wasn't easy, and there were times when the pain resurfaced, threatening to pull me back into the darkness. But I kept moving forward, one step at a time. Rachel and I began to find new ways to connect, rediscovering the things that had brought us together in the first place. We took up new hobbies, planned weekend getaways, and made a conscious effort to spend quality time together. Slowly but surely, the distance between us began to close. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, Rachel turned to me with a hesitant smile. "I have something for you," she said, reaching into her bag and pulling out a small, wrapped package. I took the package, my curiosity piqued. "What's this?" "Just open it," she replied, her eyes shining with anticipation. I carefully unwrapped the package, revealing a leather-bound journal. Inside, the pages were filled with handwritten entries, each one detailing Rachel's thoughts and feelings over the past few months. As I read through the journal, I felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of sadness, gratitude, and hope. "Rachel, this is..." I struggled to find the words, overwhelmed by the depth of her honesty and vulnerability. "I wanted you to see how much this means to me," she said softly. "How much I want to make things right." I looked at her, my heart full. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "This means a lot to me." She reached out and took my hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "I love you, Mark. I know we've been through a lot, but I believe in us. I believe we can get through this." "I love you too, Rachel," I replied, squeezing her hand. "And I believe in us too." In that moment, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for so long. The road ahead was still uncertain, and there would undoubtedly be more challenges to face. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the right path, moving forward together. As the weeks turned into months, Rachel and I continued to rebuild our relationship, finding new ways to connect and grow. We attended couples retreats, joined a support group for people who had experienced infidelity, and made a conscious effort to communicate openly and honestly. Our journey was far from easy, and there were moments when the pain and doubt resurfaced, threatening to derail our progress. But each time, we faced those challenges head-on, drawing strength from our commitment to each other and the love that had brought us together. In time, the scars of betrayal began to fade, replaced by a deeper, more resilient bond. We had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, more united than ever before. And in the end, that was the greatest triumph of all. Not the revenge I had sought, but the love and forgiveness that had ultimately healed our wounds and brought us back to each other. As Rachel and I worked through the layers of hurt and betrayal, there came a point when we both realized we needed to have a final, honest conversation about our future. Despite the progress we had made, the lingering doubts and unresolved issues needed to be addressed. It was time to decide if we could truly move forward together, or if it was better for both of us to part ways. One evening, after a particularly emotional counseling session, Rachel and I sat down in the living room, the weight of our unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. Max lay at our feet, sensing the tension but offering his silent, comforting presence. "Rachel," I began, taking a deep breath. "We've been through so much these past few months. I know we've made progress, but I think it's time we had a serious conversation about where we go from here." She nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of apprehension and hope. "I agree, Mark. We need to be honest with each other about what we want and what we're willing to do to make this work." I took her hand, feeling the familiar warmth that had once brought me so much comfort. "Do you still want to be with me? Truly and honestly?" Rachel looked down at our intertwined hands, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Yes, I do. But I also know that what I did hurt you deeply, and I don't want to keep hurting you. I want us to be happy, whether that means staying together or going our separate ways." Her words were a stark reminder of the gravity of our situation. We had come to a crossroads, and the decisions we made now would shape the rest of our lives. "I appreciate your honesty," I said softly. "I've been thinking a lot about what I want too. I love you, Rachel, but I'm also scared. Scared that we might never fully recover from this, that the trust might never be the same." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she squeezed my hand tighter. "I understand, Mark. I'm scared too, but I'm willing to put in the work, to do whatever it takes to rebuild that trust, if you're willing to give us another chance." I could see the sincerity in her eyes, the genuine desire to make amends. But I also knew that the road ahead would be long and challenging, filled with moments of doubt and pain. "I want to try," I said finally. "But we need to be realistic. This isn't going to be easy, and it's not going to happen overnight. We need to be patient with each other and committed to the process." Rachel nodded, wiping away her tears. "I'm willing to do that. I know it won't be easy, but I believe we can make it if we both put in the effort." We sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of our conversation settle. The decision to stay together wasn't made lightly, and we both understood the challenges that lay ahead. But there was also a sense of hope, a belief that we could overcome the obstacles if we faced them together. "I think we should set some ground rules," I said, breaking the silence. "Guidelines to help us navigate this process and keep us accountable." "Okay," Rachel agreed, her expression resolute. "What do you have in mind?" "First and foremost, complete honesty," I began. "No more secrets, no more lies. We need to be open with each other about our feelings, our fears, and our needs." "Agreed," Rachel said. "Honesty is crucial. What else?" "We should continue counseling," I continued, "both individually and together. Dr. Ellis has been a great help, and I think it's important to have that support as we work through this." "Yes, I think that's a good idea," she nodded. "Counseling has helped us a lot so far. And we need to rebuild our connection," I added. "Spend quality time together, rediscover the things that brought us together in the first place. It's important to nurture our relationship and find joy in each other's company again." Rachel smiled, a glimmer of hope shining in her eyes. "I'd like that. We've been so focused on the pain in the past that we've forgotten to enjoy the present." "Exactly," I said, feeling a sense of relief at our shared understanding. "It won't be easy, but I believe we can do it if we stay committed to each other and to the process." Rachel leaned in, her lips brushing against mine in a gentle, reassuring kiss. "Thank you, Mark, for giving us a chance." I held her close, feeling the warmth of her embrace. "Thank you, Rachel, for being willing to fight for us." In that moment, I felt a sense of peace and determination. The road ahead would be challenging, but we were committed to facing it together. We had made the decision to stay and fight for our marriage, to rebuild the trust and love that had been shattered. As the weeks turned into months, Rachel and I followed through on our commitment to each other. We continued our counseling sessions with Dr. Ellis, both individually and as a couple, delving into the deeper issues that had led to our situation. We learned to communicate more effectively, to listen without judgment, and to express our needs and concerns openly. We also made a conscious effort to spend quality time together, rediscovering the joys of our shared interests and creating new memories. We went on hikes, took weekend trips, and enjoyed quiet evenings at home, finding solace in each other's company. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Rachel turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about what life would be like if we hadn't gone through all of this?" she asked. I considered her question, my mind drifting back to the early days of our relationship. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I also think that going through this has made us stronger. We've learned so much about ourselves and each other. And while I wish we hadn't had to go through the pain, I'm grateful for the growth it's brought us." Rachel nodded, her eyes reflecting a similar sentiment. "I feel the same way. It's been hard, but I think we're better for it. More honest, more connected." We sat in companionable silence, the weight of our shared experiences binding us together in a way that was both profound and comforting. The journey had been long and difficult, but we had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more committed to each other. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the landscape, I felt a sense of contentment and hope. The scars of the past would always be there, a reminder of the pain and betrayal we had endured. But they were also a testament to our strength and our determination to rebuild. Rachel reached out and took my hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "I love you, Mark," she said softly. "Thank you for believing in us." "I love you too, Rachel," I replied, squeezing her hand. "And thank you for fighting for us." In that moment, I knew that while our journey was far from over, we were on the right path. Together, we had faced the worst and come out the other side, scarred but stronger. And that was something worth holding on to, something worth celebrating. The last conversation we had that evening marked a turning point in our relationship. It was a reaffirmation of our commitment to each other, and a promise to continue building a future together. We had faced the darkness and found the light, and in doing so, we had rediscovered the love that had brought us together in the first place. As we moved forward, we did so with a renewed sense of purpose and hope. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, but we were ready to face them together, one step at a time. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The choice to keep moving forward, to keep believing in each other, and to keep building the life we wanted together. The decision to stay together marked the beginning of a new chapter in our lives, but it was just the start of a long journey toward healing and rebuilding our relationship. Rachel and I were committed to making it work, but we knew it would require effort, patience, and most importantly, time. Our first step was to continue our counseling sessions with Dr. Ellis. These sessions became a lifeline for us, a safe space where we could express our feelings, confront our fears, and work through our issues with the guidance of a professional. Dr. Ellis helped us establish clear goals for our relationship and provided us with practical tools to improve our communication and rebuild trust. One of the most significant challenges we faced was addressing the underlying issues that had led to Rachel's affair. We needed to understand why it happened and what we could do to prevent it from happening again. Rachel admitted that she had felt lonely and neglected, and that her affair with Mike had been a way to escape those feelings. This was difficult for me to hear, but it was also a wake-up call. I had to take responsibility for my part in the breakdown of our relationship. We made a conscious effort to prioritize our time together. We scheduled regular date nights, even if it was just a simple dinner at home or a walk in the park. We also made time for deeper conversations, discussing our dreams, our fears, and our plans for the future. These moments of connection helped us rediscover the love and affection that had brought us together in the first place. Another crucial step in our healing process was rebuilding trust. This was perhaps the most challenging aspect of our journey. Trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to repair, and it required consistent effort from both of us. Rachel was committed to being transparent and open about her actions and whereabouts. She willingly shared her phone, emails, and social media accounts with me, not as a way to control her, but as a gesture of her commitment to rebuilding trust. I, too, had to work on my issues with trust. I had to learn to let go of my anger and suspicion and to give Rachel the benefit of the doubt. This was not easy, and there were times when my insecurities got the better of me. But with the help of Dr. Ellis and Rachel's patience and understanding, I gradually learned to trust her again. We also took steps to address our individual needs and personal growth. Rachel and I both sought individual counseling to work through our own issues and to become better partners for each other. Rachel focused on dealing with her feelings of loneliness and self-worth, while I worked on managing my anger and learning to communicate more effectively. As we navigated this challenging journey, we were also faced with practical decisions about our future. One of the most significant decisions was whether or not to move to a new city. Rachel had received a job offer in another state, which presented both an opportunity and a challenge. Moving could be a fresh start for us, away from the memories and reminders of the past, but it also meant leaving behind our support system and the familiarity of our current life. After much discussion and deliberation, we decided to take the leap and move to the new city. It was a difficult decision, but we both felt that a change of scenery would be beneficial for our healing process. We packed up our belongings, sold our house, and moved to a small but charming apartment in a city where we could start anew. The move brought with it a sense of adventure and renewal. We explored our new surroundings, found new favorite spots, and started building a life together in this new place. The change of environment helped us create new memories and experiences, untainted by the past. As we settled into our new life, we continued to prioritize our relationship and our commitment to each other. We joined a couples support group where we met other couples who had gone through similar experiences. Sharing our story and hearing others' journeys helped us feel less alone and provided valuable insights and encouragement. One evening, a few months after our move, Rachel and I sat on the balcony of our new apartment, looking out at the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the buildings, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the potted plants we had placed around the balcony. "I feel like we're finally starting to find our footing," Rachel said, her voice filled with a mix of relief and hope. I nodded, taking her hand in mine. "We've come a long way, and we still have a long way to go, but I feel hopeful too." Rachel smiled, her eyes reflecting the soft light of the setting sun. "Thank you, Mark, for giving us another chance, for believing in us." "Thank you, Rachel," I replied, my voice sincere, "for fighting for us and for being willing to put in the work." As we sat there, enjoying the quiet moments of togetherness, I realized how far we had come. The pain and betrayal of the past had not disappeared, but they no longer defined us. We had faced the darkness together, and in doing so, we had found a deeper, more resilient love. Our journey was far from over, and there would undoubtedly be more challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I felt confident in our ability to face them together. We had chosen to stay and fight for our marriage, and in doing so, we had found a way to move forward. In the months that followed, Rachel and I continued to build our life together, one step at a time. We celebrated small victories, supported each other through setbacks, and remained committed to our goals. We learned to appreciate the little moments of joy and connection, knowing that they were the building blocks of a stronger, healthier relationship. We also continued our counseling, both individually and as a couple. Dr. Ellis remained a valuable resource, helping us navigate the complexities of our emotions and providing guidance as we worked through our challenges. Our sessions became less frequent over time, a testament to the progress we had made, but we knew we could always reach out for support if needed. One day, while sorting through some old boxes, I came across a photo album from the early years of our relationship. As I flipped through the pages, I was reminded of the love and happiness we had shared. It was a poignant reminder of how far we had come and the resilience of our bond. I brought the album to Rachel, who was sitting on the couch reading. "Look what I found," I said, handing it to her. She smiled as she took the album, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "Our early days," she said softly. "We were so young and carefree." "We were," I agreed, sitting down beside her, "and we've grown so much since then." Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I'm grateful for everything we've been through. It's made us who we are today." I reached out and took her hand, feeling the familiar warmth of her touch. "Me too, Rachel. Me too." As we sat there looking through the memories of our past, I felt a sense of peace and contentment. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had also been incredibly rewarding. We had faced the worst and come out stronger, more united, and more in love than ever before. In the end, it wasn't the revenge or the pain that defined us. It was our commitment to each other, our willingness to fight for our relationship, and our ability to find forgiveness and healing. We had chosen to stay and build a future together, and that choice had made all the difference. As the sun set outside our window, casting a warm glow over our apartment, I knew that our journey was far from over. But I also knew that we were ready to face whatever came our way, together, and that was the greatest victory of all. Settling into our new life brought a mix of excitement and uncertainty. The change of scenery and the fresh start were exactly what Rachel and I needed, but there was still an underlying tension as we navigated the remnants of our past. Yet there was also hope, a shared belief that we could build something stronger from the ashes of what had been broken. Rachel's new job kept her busy, but she made a point to balance her professional commitments with our personal life. I, too, found solace in my work, pouring my energy into new projects and finding fulfillment in the challenges and achievements that came with them. We were building a new rhythm, one that allowed us to thrive individually while also nurturing our relationship. One of the first steps we took in our new city was to establish a network of friends and a support system. We joined local clubs and attended community events, eager to integrate ourselves into our new environment. The people we met were warm and welcoming, and their kindness helped us feel at home. Rachel and I also continued our commitment to quality time together. We explored the city, discovering new restaurants, parks, and cultural events. These shared experiences helped us reconnect on a deeper level, reminding us of the love and companionship that had always been at the core of our relationship. One Saturday morning, we decided to take a day trip to a nearby coastal town. The drive was scenic, the landscape a soothing blend of rolling hills and sparkling ocean views. As we walked along the beach, the sound of waves crashing against the shore, we talked about our hopes and dreams for the future. "I've been thinking," Rachel said, her voice thoughtful. "Maybe we should start volunteering together. Give back to the community and spend time doing something meaningful," I smiled, appreciating her suggestion. "That sounds like a great idea. It could be a wonderful way to connect with each other and with the community." We found a local animal shelter that was in need of volunteers, and we signed up to help. Spending time with the animals, caring for them, and working alongside Rachel brought a new sense of fulfillment and joy. It was a reminder that we could find happiness and purpose together, even in the simplest of activities. As the months passed, our relationship continued to evolve. We celebrated our small victories, supported each other through setbacks, and remained committed to our goals. We faced challenges, of course, moments of doubt and insecurity that threatened to disrupt our progress. But each time, we chose to confront them head-on, drawing strength from our shared determination and love. One evening, after a particularly fulfilling day at the shelter, Rachel and I sat on our balcony, sipping wine and watching the stars. The city below buzzed with life, but up here, it felt like our own private sanctuary. "I've been thinking a lot about the future," Rachel said, her voice soft, "about what we want and where we're headed." I looked at her, sensing the seriousness of her tone. "What do you see in our future?" She took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "I see us continuing to grow, to heal, and to build a life we're proud of. I see us finding new ways to connect and support each other. And maybe someday, I see us starting a family." Her words filled me with a mix of emotions, hope, excitement, and a touch of apprehension. The idea of starting a family was something we had talked about in the past, but it had always seemed like a distant possibility. Now, in the wake of everything we had been through, it felt like a tangible, achievable goal. "I'd like that," I said, my voice steady. "I'd like to build a future with you, Rachel. To create a family and a home filled with love and support." She smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached her eyes. "Then let's do it. Let's keep moving forward, one step at a time." The decision to start a family marked a new chapter in our journey. It wasn't something we rushed into. We took our time, ensuring that we were both ready for the responsibilities and joys that came with it. We continued our counseling sessions, focusing on strengthening our relationship and preparing ourselves for the next phase of our lives. In the meantime, we continued to explore our interests and hobbies, deepening our connection and enjoying the life we were building together. We traveled to new places, tried new activities, and supported each other in our personal and professional endeavors. One particularly memorable trip was a hiking excursion in the nearby mountains. The trail was challenging, but the views were breathtaking. As we reached the summit, looking out over the vast expanse of nature, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment and unity. "We've come a long way," Rachel said, her voice filled with awe. "Not just today, but in our journey together." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "We have, and I'm grateful for every step we've taken, even the difficult ones." She reached for my hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "Me too, Mark. Me too." As we stood there, taking in the beauty of the world around us, I realized that our journey was a testament to the strength of our love and commitment. We had faced the darkest of times and emerged stronger, more resilient, and more in love than ever before. The months turned into years, and our life continued to unfold in beautiful, unexpected ways. We eventually decided to start a family, and the joy of welcoming our first child brought a new dimension to our relationship. Parenthood was a challenging and rewarding experience, filled with sleepless nights, endless laughter, and profound moments of connection. Through it all, Rachel and I remained committed to each other and to the life we were building together. We continued our counseling sessions, now focusing on balancing our roles as partners and parents. We made time for ourselves, ensuring that our relationship remained strong and vibrant. Our new life was not without its challenges, but each obstacle we faced only strengthened our bond. We had learned to communicate openly, to support each other through difficult times, and to celebrate our victories, both big and small. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching our child play in the yard, Rachel turned to me with a contented smile. "I'm proud of us, Mark. Proud of what we've built and how far we've come." I looked at her, my heart full of love and gratitude. "Me too, Rachel. We've been through so much, but we've come out stronger, and I wouldn't have it any other way." As we watched the sun set, casting a warm glow over our home, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Our journey had been long and difficult, but it had also been incredibly rewarding. We had faced our demons, rebuilt our relationship, and created a life filled with love, joy, and resilience. In the end, it wasn't the betrayal or the pain that defined us. It was our ability to forgive, to heal, and to move forward together. Our new life was a testament to the power of love and commitment, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, we could find hope and happiness. And as we continued our journey hand in hand, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, with the strength and resilience that had brought us through the darkest of times. Our new life was a testament to the enduring power of love, and it was a journey I was grateful to share with Rachel, now and always.